Singers reminded us, place on institutions administering justice important demands that need to be answered rapidly. In consequence, they are paradigm examples of situations of choice under uncertainty, where decisions have to be taken without necessarily having a good knowledge of what their consequences will be. This is related to the fact that catastrophes disrupt not only the capacity of their direct victim to make sound expectations, but also those of social deciders. Apart from the technical difficulties as to how an appropriate decision can be reached, which this uncertainty creates, it also raises important moral questions. How can justice be defined in such situation of limited and uncertain knowledge? Closely related to this is the fact that catastrophes create unheard of or radically unexpected issues of justice. As illustrated by the recent Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, as well as the exclusive zone around Fukushima nuclear station, catastrophes raise, for example, questions concerning property rights and responsibility which have no place in normal social situation and for which there are no provision in either our legal system or moral theories. Second, catastrophes placed upon existing theories of justice demands that go beyond what they can foresee, demands that are outside the issues which they were designed to address. In consequence, they bring us to question some of the basic concepts of our theories of justice. What is the place of freedom and equality in the aftermath of a catastrophe, or the role of the concept of reciprocity in issues of justice following a catastrophe? The catastrophe is a unique event that generally only affects certain members of society, while reciprocity is usually conceived as resting on an assumption of symmetry between individuals who may exchange their place in the future. The catastrophe often introduces a radical asymmetry which falsifies this assumption. It is not always the case that victims of catastrophe, recipients of help, will be able to become donors in the future. It is often quite certain that they will not be able to. Catastrophes questions our conception of justice, of what it requires about agents qualified, are entitled to certain rights and benefits. Thirdly, because of the disruption of the social and personal order which they cause, catastrophe bring us closer to the origin of justice. In normal time, the existence of a more or less just social order is taken for granted. Of course, this order is open to criticism and improvement, but basic rules of justice are taken to exist, as are the normal to just means of transforming them. As suggested above, catastrophe challenges both the completeness and relevance of this order. It thrusts the individual into a situation where existing rules of justice prove insufficient guidance and raises difficulties for which they have little to say. Catastrophes force us to reinvent justice, but without any veil of ignorance, yet in conditions of radically limited knowledge, they can therefore provide important insights into the nature of justice. Catastrophes therefore neither abrogate nor silence justice. To the opposite, they constitute extraordinary situations which brings us to renew our conception of justice and to expand the domain of claims which can be received as legitimate. For the two principal members of this research group, this topic constitutes a natural continuation of their previous research. In Against Injustice, Professor Gutham and I argued, following Matthew Sen, that injustice can be directly recognized in the absence of the theory of justice. Catastrophes precisely give rise to novel claims that cannot be framed in existing theories of justice, but which nonetheless need to be addressed and evaluated. In consequence, they both illustrate and challenge Sen's intuition by putting to the test our ability to recognize and to respond to radically new issues which could not be predicted beforehand. Unlike the question of risk, which is about our limited ability to predict the future and to foresee what could happen, and which, once the catastrophe has happened, give rise to retrospective inquiries seeking to discover what went wrong. The question of justice and catastrophe is prospective. It is turned towards the future. It is concerned with what it now is and with how to respond with justice to a new situation that was unforeseen. Thank you. So I would now like to introduce our keynote speaker, who's Professor Jean-Pierre Dupuis. Professor Dupuis is many things. He is, among other things, and this makes his contribution to this conference very important, he is chair of the Ethics Committee of the French High Authority on Nuclear Safety and Security. And in that context, he has come 2 times at least in Japan to visit and to interact with people who are active in what is happening in Fukushima. He's also the author of a book entitled Katastrofe which was published in French in 2002, which is now being translated into English. It will soon be out under the title Enlightened Doomsday. He is also the author of Petite Métaphysique du Tsunami, which was published in 2005 and has recently been translated into Japanese. And he is professor at Stanford University and at the École Polytechnique in Paris. Please welcome Professor Dupuis. Well, thank you very much.
Speak English. My native language is French, but that's how it is today. The title of my paper has been slightly changed. It's called now Enlightened Doomsday and the Concern for the Future. Enlightened Doomsday, that's my own invention, my own philosophical construction. You could replace enlightened with rational doomsday, And what I'm trying to do is to rehabilitate the notion, the concept, and the place of the prophet of doom in our modern societies. When we think of prophets of doom in the Western world, it all starts not really with the Jewish world, where most of the prophets of the biblical world were prophets not of happiness, but prophets of doom. Today, this is considered to be, in the Western world, it is considered to be a religious archaism, and it's no longer taken seriously. And my task, self-assigned task, is to rehabilitate this notion and this role in our society. Hence the notion of enlightened, reference to what the Western world calls the Enlightenment, which took place in Europe in the 18th century. The concern for the future is my contribution to your reflection on social justice. I will try to say that the concern for the future shouldn't be construed, interpreted in terms of distributive justice. Concern that is distributive justice between us today and the future generations. It doesn't work. So we have to come up with something. To complete my presentation, the presentation that Paul did, by the way, Katas Trophy is going to be published in Japanese too. It has been translated. That's true, huh? Yes. Yes. It's going to be published too, in Japanese. And my book on Chernobyl also. Already. So, sorry for the auto publicity, but anyway, it's in French, so nobody will understand, even those who do not understand English. This is a series of books that I wrote and published after 9/11. That is, September 11th was for me the tipping point in my intellectual life. And since then, I've written and published, 10 to 11 books on catastrophes and disasters. And so, disasters of all kinds. Natural disasters, that's the book on tsunamis. Moral disasters, that's 9/11, September 11th. But that's also Hiroshima and Auschwitz. Industrial disasters, that's Chernobyl, that's Fukushima. But my main conclusion, these reflections that I've been carrying out, is that the lines between those categories, natural disasters, moral disasters, industrial or man-made disasters, those lines are constantly being blurred. They disappear. Professor Kassim, in his introduction, mentioned two cases, the Fukushima disaster and climate change. I mean, think of climate change. Is it a natural disaster or is it a man-made disaster? This distinction is no longer valid. For a long time, climate was taken to be the archetype of nature, that which escapes us. Today we know, there are people who object to that, but we know that human beings have an impact on the climate. Take Fukushima. The huge difference between Fukushima and Chernobyl is that I can put it this way, the nuclear devil, or the nuclear tiger, in the case of Fukushima, was awakened by two natural disasters, an earthquake and a tsunami. So the lines between natural, moral, industrial disasters are being more and more blurred. And I don't think those distinctions are valid. Anyway, at least that's my conclusion after writing 9 or 10 years on the top.